I'll do the right thing and slate you this week, because sometimes
Let's clap together.
sometimes we don't slate well enough, and I think sometimes I must put your people through hell.
Sorry.
Alan Howle joining us today on Real Insight. It's cool that you're here because you're the guy that produces this thing.
Yeah, I'm pumped to be here. Been working with you and Dan for the last, I think the last 18 months to 2 years, or something like that.
Be about that.
Yeah, and to actually now be in the room where all the magic happens and everything else. So it's really cool to be here. And yeah, no, thank you for having me.
That's right. This will be episode 9, which I didn't even think I'd get to, but here we are, episode 9. We're not far from double digits, which is cool.
Yeah.
Alan, I guess today's session, I really want to open up and explore the world of content creation.
Yeah.
And in particular, the stuff that I've liked to really draw on over the past few weeks with guests that I've had is, how does this stuff rely or relate to, I should say, to modern business?
Yeah.
Right? A lot of people aren't creating content and should be creating content.
Yeah.
What does that look like in that space?
Yeah, for sure. So I think what people are realizing, especially with technology, AI, and all the other things that our world is seeing right now, it's even more important to have that human-to-human connection. This is even the difference between me being face-to-face with you here instead of over a Zoom call or whatever. There's more emotion. You can read my body language a lot more, and I think, with social media content, it's another way of building relationships online with people, face to face and things like that, specifically with the work that we do. There's obviously lots of different types of video content that you can do, but the stuff that we really focus on is really connecting humans to humans. And obviously that's businesses and business connections. Maybe that's clients, referral partners, whatever the case is. And it's really just an extension of that relationship. And yes, you can, do different videos to maximize and build new relationships, and a whole range of other things. And there's more that I can obviously get into when it comes to content and how we structure it and all those other things. But yeah, that's the preface that we look at, is making sure that above and beyond algorithms, social media platforms, which can change very quickly and get very confusing, we want to make sure that at the end of the day, you're building either new connections or you're building stronger connections with your existing clients and partners and so on.
For people that are new to this whole ecosystem, and let's say, for instance, they're not aware of where to start or what to do, is it enough these days to pull out the iPhone, point it at you and just start?
Absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely. I think I will always recommend people just try and go out and do it. And this will, what can sometimes happen here as well is obviously depending on the size of the business, you've got different hierarchies and sometimes different elements that are at play, personal, having personalities within a huge organization like a bank can be very, very difficult because of the legalities that people have to, that you have to get past and whatnot. All the way through to a solo business owner, it's a lot easier because they're the business owner, they're the HR manager, they're the PR person.
There's no shareholders to worry about upsetting.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But what I have started to notice, even with one of the big banks, is that I've noticed I've actually caught them doing video content very much like the way that we do it, and I'm really it makes me realize that we're not only are we onto something for the smaller businesses that we work with, but those larger organizations are really paying attention to the human-to-human relationship that is at play, and that as much as you have a bank and an organization and all those other things, that human-to-human connection is the thing that keeps you in business, and it needs to be an important element to your marketing, especially if you're someone who really values your clients, your customers, your partners, and so on as well. So,
do you think that's become so much more important after COVID?
I think it's always been important, and I think but absolutely, I think COVID's reiterated it.
The importance of people being around people and connecting with people.
Absolutely, yeah, absolutely. I think that obviously COVID's taught us a few different things. Even like for me, one of the reasons why I think we actually started working with you guys, well, it would have been through COVID.
Probably was.
And hence one of the reasons why I wasn't here initially was because I couldn't get down here because of the lockdowns.
Because where are you?
I'm based on the Central Coast in New South Wales.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so I'm down here doing some filming and some other bits and pieces, but
I didn't know whether you were New South or Brizzy.
Yeah, so just up north of Sydney, in between Sydney and Newcastle, and so as a result of COVID, that's why we were able to bring a local videographer here, utilize our system and what we do and all those other things as well. So there's obviously lots of changes that have happened and lots of different things, but yeah, it's really interesting, isn't it?
It's driving that human connection, to your point, and I guess that's what inspired me to start this thing.
Yeah.
I worked in radio for many years, and I just enjoy talking to people, particularly about things they're passionate about. That's the thing that turns me on, and so having these conversations is a joy for me.
Yeah.
I don't consider it work. Sometimes I feel a bit guilty that I get to do a bit of a podcast too, because it's good fun.
Yeah.
When people are thinking of putting together some video content, what do you consider to be the most important things in designing a message?
Yeah.
What do you need to get across?
Beautiful. All right. So this is a really good question. And typically what we will do whenever we start working with someone is we want to focus on 4 key elements of a brand and their message and their goals and things like that. And so we break it into 4 different video types. And typically it doesn't really matter what the end goal is, whether it is to generate more sales, like more inbound sales, whether that's to build stronger relationships and keep people on board, whether it's for hiring or whatever the case is. When it comes to video marketing, we use these 4 key types of videos. So the first one is conversational, exactly what we're doing right now, a very free-flowing open conversation. You can really tell a lot by someone's body language, their pitch, their tone, their volume, the pauses, all those other things, that plays a big part. Then you have educational content. So this is effectively talking about your space, your industry, and the things that you're an expert in, and effectively building authority without saying I am the authority. It's just implied because you're consistently talking about the thing. So that's the educational part that can obviously come in short form and long form content, very much like, again, what we're doing here. And then we've got results and social proof. So this can come in the form of case studies. This can come in the form of testimonials. This can come in the form of reviews and all those other things. And then the last one is what we call to action type videos. So this can be anywhere from, I was just filming for a real estate agent earlier today, and we're creating him what's called a profile video for his realestate.com.au profile, all the way through to, we work with some physiotherapists in they have a few different offices in Grafton, in the Gold Coast, and a couple of other places, and they wanted to put together a video to help promote, hiring new therapists and health professionals and things like that, all the way through to video ads, landing page videos in that sort of section. So there's a wide variety there. And that's sort of our system. So it's our system that we call the Mayor of Town method anyway. That we break down those 4 different types of videos. So whenever we're going to film with someone, we typically content batch a whole bunch of videos into those 4 categories. And typically for the most part, that's why someone comes to work with us anyway, is we sort of work within those parameters.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
So you're a total house as far as someone that wants to come up with a particular go-to-market strategy. Are they then working alongside you? Here's what we sort of want to achieve, and you're building that roadmap for them.
Yeah. So the big headline that we're known for is creating 6 months worth of video content and filming in 2 days.
Oh, good.
And so did you not know that?
Nah.
No? So that's our big headline is create 6 months worth of video content, film it all in 2 days. So it's everything from, scripting out the videos, going through filming on location, editing the videos, and then publishing it to YouTube, Facebook, LinkedIn, Instagram, TikTok on someone's behalf. And then obviously, as you're experiencing, we then also do elements of podcasting. We've got different clients who do events and things like that. We cover events and then create like using the 4 different categories that I just mentioned, where we've got a variation of different types of video pieces that are going out on a consistent basis over whether it is the initial 6 months, but a lot of our clients stay on where they're obviously seeing the value and all those other things as well. So, yeah.
You touched on a word there that I like to always capitalize on, and that's consistency.
Absolutely.
Is this a consistency game?
Hell yes. Yep. And so I was literally watching a video from Mr. Beast. For those who don't know who Mr. Beast is, he's
the biggest guy on the internet.
He's probably the biggest YouTuber. I
think it was between him and PewDiePie for a while.
Yeah,
I think, and it was always, they were like, it was the most subscribers.
But majority of his videos are now getting more views than the Super Bowl at halftime, just on a regular basis. And so one of the things I was watching this video, it might have been a couple of days ago, he said, don't talk to me don't talk to me about views or anything to do with your YouTube channel until you've published 100 videos. And the emphasis that he's trying to put in is there is so much that you've got to learn over that course of a period of time. He's obviously talking about YouTube, but it's the same across the board. There's so much that you learn over a course of a period of time through trying, executing, revising, trying different ways, adding different creativity, things like that. Like even before we started, you mentioned I when we first spoke, you were super pumped and excited about the podcast.
And now I'm over it.
And then it does get to a point where it's like it becomes hard,
it does,
right?
Yeah.
And
that's where I am now.
Yeah. It becomes really hard because not only have you got when the pressure of work or life or whatever's going on, it does become really, really hard. And so trying to keep it all up and trying to, manage it all can be very difficult. And that's why a lot of people work with us is we'll come in for a single day, once every 3 months typically, and film a whole stack of content. Plus, we work with a whole range of different coaches, consultants, people in property, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And yeah, we'll sort of slice and dice some of their existing content up, their testimonials, their events, just cover a whole bunch of stuff and pretty much do all the heavy lifting when it comes to the editing, the strategy, the publishing, all those other things. And then checking on a regular basis anyway. So, yeah.
Yeah, all the stuff that is the troubling bit. For me, and I have ADHD, so this is perfect for me to not want to do. What I struggle with, I can get in here and I can, when I have to pull that SD card out, extract the files, convert the files, and then do my final, because I'm an audio guy, so I'm pedantic about the audio. I've got to try and do my final audio mix.
Yeah.
That'll take me a week.
Yeah.
It's a 5-minute job, but it'll take me a week to get it done. And it is because I'm at the point now where it's hard.
Yeah.
Right? So the buzz of doing a podcast has worn off. And now I look at the views and I'm like, 40, 50. Yeah. I'm expecting by the third week, I'll have 10 million views on each video. It doesn't happen that way, does it? It's one of those things that 2-3 years, then maybe.
I think it all comes down to your goals and what you're looking to do and achieve. Because realistically, it's not going to there's going to obviously be an outcome that you're looking for, whether it is views, whether it is subscribers, whether it is for some businesses, I'm going to be publishing content in order to generate more revenue or better trust or better conversions with our sales process, whatever the case is, right? And there are different metrics that you'll have to measure and track and all those other things. But with video content and with, I guess, branding in general, it's one of those things where it's sort of you can't directly correlate the value of, building a relationship online through video content. It's just one piece of a big puzzle, your big marketing puzzle. And so it's interesting because without being, too down on it. It's a very important part, and it can play a very vital part to building trust. But it's also not the thing that's going to get you across the line. Like a good video ad used within a good campaign with good copy, with a good landing page, and all this other stuff can make you a lot of money. And it's one element of a whole system. And so it's really just understanding. For me, the one thing that I will draw back on is what feels fun for you, what does feel good for you. Because when it's focusing on the process rather than the outcome, whether that's views, whatever the case is, it becomes much more of a joy of like, I can tell now that we're here, now that you're enjoying this conversation, you're picking up things.
This is the stuff that I love.
Yeah, exactly.
This is the part that I love. I don't love any of the other stuff. And again, because I worked in radio, I never had to worry about any of the other stuff because it's live. And when you walk out of the studio, that's it until next week. But now there's a whole bunch of other stuff that needs to go on, which is why I need people like you in my life because I can't be bothered doing it.
Exactly right. So anyway, what I'd suggest is focusing on the joy of the process, the joy of the creativity, because that's naturally where everything's going to come from. If you walk in, especially if we were going to film together and your intentions is to just simply grow your views and your followers and all those other things, which naturally will happen, but it won't happen particularly in the way that you think it will happen, in the way of finding the thing, finding the flow, finding the creativity, and then continuing to build from that point.
Because you've also got that, the amazing thing that happens with the internet these days is something going viral. And that can be anything. That can be something that you weren't even prepared for. I watched a clip the other day of a guy who he had like 100 or 1,000 viewers on TikTok. And then he just did this little short reel of him blowing up blue balloons in his hallway. Yeah. And it went from 1,000 to 100,000 followers in 2 days or 3 days or something.
We have some really funny anomalies. Like there's a client of ours who, she's a female and she's in the property space. She filmed a whole bunch of content with us, and there was one particular video, like she's getting ranging around 1,000 views, and one video got up to 10,000 views. I was like, oh, okay, I'm keen to know what this video is. And I watched it, I was like, I can't tell the difference. And then I watched it a few times, and the only thing that I can put it down to is at the beginning she goes, oh, and then she answered the question. She made like this funny, almost like a noise. And so I don't that is the only thing that I can put it down to, with the comparison to the other videos. So there's things that at the very beginning that you can do, hooks and all this other stuff, but it's quite fascinating anyway.
Well, particularly when you're in the reels space or the short space, right? Because now we're talking about 30 and 40-second pieces of content that are infinite. So what have you got? You've got the first 2 or 3 seconds to grab enough attention for someone to not swipe away on that reel. That's the stuff that my brain can't. I'm not from... Yeah. I came from a world where, professional musician, and struggling with the concept of, I want to write music, but I have to conform it to 3.5 minutes because if I don't, it won't make it to radio. Yeah. Well, 3.5 minutes seemed like a really short time to be creative. Well, now that's been condensed right down to, 30, 40 seconds. How do we make something appealing with such a short time frame? Yep. And with everyone's attention spans being that of goldfish these days.
Yeah. I think it all comes back to one, having good intentions. And what I mean by good intentions is when you are focused on the process of creativity and, whether it's creating video content to build better relationships or to just add enormous value, and almost like a giving to a serving, service first. Like you think about any top Mr. Beast, right? He gives a lot of stuff away, like houses for $1 or, some really, really, he gives unbelievable value in and he's then learned how to storytell and all those other things to make sure that his videos are getting the views and the make sure that there's people are staying on and all those other things. So this is where I would suggest that it's just giving enormous value. Like really, there's a really good book called Contagious, and I would highly recommend it. It's they basically did a study around like what makes things go viral, what makes things pick up and go, and things like that. And the simple answer that I can give, or the summary from that book, is when people have light bulb moments or it really impacts their value system, they will like click. Like, so if there's something that's really something that really catches, like that you are infuriated by or feel unjust or whatever the case is, you'll go down a rabbit hole because it's hooked you on your feelings. It's the same where you have a light bulb moment from someone. It's like, you know, this might be a problem or something that you're trying to solve, and they explain it in a 1, 2, 3 step process, and you're like, oh wow, like, and if you can get that oh wow moment at the end of your videos, at the end, you know, those are the sort of things that business owners, and we really try to help business owners with during their process as well. But I think above and beyond all of those things, the foundation needs to be like having fun and creativity. That's
and being authentic.
Yeah,
It's important to be authentic. Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah.
How did you get into all this?
So good question. I actually started, so when I left school, I did a graphic design course, and I wasn't very good at it. I was doing a few different part-time jobs, and I enjoyed the concept of it, but I definitely did not have the business acumen that I do today. And anyway, the long and short of that was I ended up getting into the corporate world, working for a big bank, working in insurance, and then moved to a big bank. But whilst I was there, I actually tried to launch an iPhone app. And it was a big flunk. Like I borrowed 20 grand. I didn't do all the marketing and the testing and all the other things that I should have, or that I worked out and learned about after I launched it. So I launched this app. It was a massive flunk. That was, if you will, my university degree, or my degree in marketing and all the things that I should have done. I learned so much after I launched.
What was the app?
Yep. So I called it the Fire app.
Yeah.
So this is about 10 years. This was maybe even 12 years ago. It was when apps were like the thing. The iPhone came out, apps were...
It was the next gold rush.
Yeah, exactly. And so I was into a lot of personal development stuff through a guy named Tony Robbins.
Yep.
And Tony Robbins, I was reading a lot of his stuff, and he was talking about goal setting. So I thought of this really cool idea of creating this app where you can track your goals and put it into different categories, whether it's family or health or money or whatever the case is. And it's like a really cool, almost like a little, and have like a little vision board and all this other stuff. And I built this app using my graphic design skills. I built this app. I paid someone, to code it and all those other things. And it wasn't until I launched it, and like my friends and family, like I was like, yeah, all the right, like, and then no one wanted to, like, it just wasn't picking up. And I was like, okay. And then so I went and spoke to some people. They said, you need to redesign it. You should have, gotten some people to test it. I was like, oh, okay. And I could have paid $200 to get it tested, and then, do all this stuff. And before needing to do revisions and this, that, the other, I could have done all of that before I even laid $1 down. And so I learned all these different things about marketing. And after that point, it actually really got me down. I was sort of like, it was the first time I tried something that I was really passionate about, and I got really upset because it didn't work out. And it was sort of like, in my mind, it was the thing that was going to take me out of the corporate world, like to do what I want to do and all this other stuff. And then, a few years passed, and I'm like sort of doing my graphic design stuff. And then the year I turned 30, so that year I turned 30, and my second child was born, Oscar, in June. And I still remember the day. The day after he was born, I was sitting on my couch, and like most fathers, you're looking into your child's eyes, and you're like, I want to do I want to be a better man for you, right? So from that point, I was like, all I know is that I want to work for myself, and I don't know what it looks like. I don't know what it would be doing. I just know that I've got graphic design skills. I can make things and design things. So I got to work in my role. I got to work on a work from home sort of role, so that I could work from home and start to build a business in the background. And so for the following 18 months, I was just doing anything and everything to make money through logos, business cards, anything and everything. And then over a course of a period of time, I was doing some filming. I was doing social media marketing. I was doing some filming with my phone and some other stuff. And then I got a gig with a real estate agency 18 months later, which I then left my full-time job. That was really cool. And then through my experience with the real estate agency, I learnt that's where I started to really find my groove in video. And at that point, I still didn't have a camera. I still didn't have anything. I was still using my phone, little gimbal and other things. I borrowed so for the real estate agency, I borrowed my father-in-law's camera first. But it was always the thing that I loved and enjoyed the most. I really enjoyed the process of, bringing the very best out of people. And that's where, it's slowly just built. I slowly obviously worked more and just focused more on that area. And then, so we've been operating now for just short of 5 years since the beginning of 2019. That's where it all started anyway. So yeah,
it's ballsy. I reckon I'm one of those people that should have worked for myself, but I know that I can't.
Yeah.
I'm a great number 2.
Yeah.
And I could never be a number 1. And it's because you need so much personal drive
100%
to make this happen, right? And I'm the guy, again, it's part of my condition, but I'm the guy that will find a million excuses not to do anything. It's just the way that I am.
Yeah.
And so I've always flirted with the idea of running my own business. And when I was a musician, you're doing that. But you don't have anything else to do because you're just a muso. So as long as you can make your $300 or $400 a week to pay for your 2-minute noodles, it's fine. But when you want to turn it into a career, and that's one of the things for me where it's this is probably as close as I'll get now to entrepreneurial stuff. Because I just love it, you know, and I just do it because I love it. And I don't get involved in the views or anything too much because that'll kill you. That's the thing that becomes the thing that stops you.
Yeah, 100%. And just on that, I think it's even to note where you do draw the line. Even recently, I realized that I didn't really have a clear direction on where I wanted to take the business. All I knew is that I wanted more sales, more growth, more everything, right? And it was actually earlier this year that I took a moment to go, you know what? We have some incredible clients on our books, and I love the work that we do. And the more that I grow, the more complex it becomes, the more team that we need to bring on and all these other things, which is not a bad thing. But for me, I sort of got to this point where I was like, you know what? I picked I've got a number and I've stuck to that number, and we now have a limited capacity as to who we do and don't take on. And basically the long and short of it is, by having that number there, it's given me so much more confidence to say no, respectfully to projects and things like that. But it's also given me real perspective it's given me the opportunity to sort of remove a lot of the fluff, remove a lot of the things that we don't need, so that we can continue to focus on the relationships and things like that. And there was a part of me, even though that sounds very sensible and everything else, there was a part of me that was I could potentially take this business to the US. And I've explored all of those things, to the US, to other countries, and grow it and scale. I've been told by many different people, you can scale this, you can grow this. And I completely agree. But I've gotten to a point now where I'm not interested in any of that. I really love and enjoy my life. I really love and enjoy the capacity that I do have. Yes, there's some things could change and everything else, but for the most part, I'm happy to be a nice boutique business and keep the clients that we do, and just continue. I want to go from like just being good to great, and almost go into that mastery element before even considering to take on more clients and things like that as well. So yeah.
And I really love that point, because we're in this spot at the moment, particularly in social media for the younger folks. It's this thing of entrepreneurship and be a millionaire and grind.
7 figures,
and
8 figures.
And it's just like we've got this culture now. You've got to work yourself to craziness so that you can have money. That point that you made is also another point that I'm coming to in my life, where it's like, particularly around success, right? Like I grew up in not a wealthy house. We weren't poor, but my mum was single and had to make ends meet. And it's the difference between getting to a point in your life where you define what success looks like as opposed to I just want to be successful. Because the issue that people come up with, if you don't have a place to measure yourself on what your success looks like, well, you get to the point where most people would consider you to be very successful and you're still like, I'm nothing. I've done nothing. I haven't achieved anything. So you've got to put those goals in so that you know, well, hang on, I'm here.
Yeah.
And now that I'm here, I'm actually cool with it. Yeah. Like I don't need to go there because I'm okay with this level. I think that's something that most people need to really reassess themselves on. Yeah. Because if you don't have an end goal, you never reach contentment.
Well, it's not just an end goal. It's knowing what you actually want. And for the most part, like if you'd asked me the same question last year, I probably would have said, I know exactly what I want. But I think this year I'm even clearer on it. Like I'm even clearer on what is the thing, because when you're clear on the thing, there's still much more that we have to do and much more. But I've eliminated distractions and I now do all my sales and marketing and obviously, and still involved in the business, filming and other aspects. And so in the past, we've had a salesperson, we've had other people, and not to say that, all of these people are bad or anything like that. We've just removed those things now that we don't need to consistently be worrying. Like that, we've got plenty of people still inquiring, asking. We're still running ads because I still see the value in keeping a consistent message and having a wait list and other things as well. But for the most part, just when you know what it is that you're actually working for, like for me, the most valuable thing is I think the cliche thing to say is balance, but the easier way of saying it is the enjoyment of working and getting to spend time with my family and being passionate about both things. And as long as that's happening and I'm constantly working towards my health and my fitness, which I've got a little bit of work to do still, but for the most part, as long as my family's happy and healthy, our business is happy and healthy, the clients are happy and healthy, that's what's important to me. And I'm just slowly removing all the distractions to stay nice and focused. Yeah.
That's definitely what I've got to do a bit more work on.
Yeah.
Because I have this thing of never being satisfied and sort of always thinking that there's room for more. It does. 100% it does. As well as, to your earlier point where you talk about people getting stuck into views and worrying about how the content's being received. ADHD people with rejection, sensitivity, dysphoria, which is another thing that I'm blessed to have, has always been that thing, which is it can sometimes stop you from trying something because you've already imagined people are going to hate it. There's no way it's going to be received well, so I'm not going to do it. Yeah. And I was only diagnosed this year. So maybe 4 or 5 months ago now.
Did you just get curious and want to go down that path and find out, or what? How did you?
So I always knew that there was something that wasn't exactly normal with my brain. And it was just, I think the giveaway for me was the symptom of emotional dysregulation, right? Sometimes I get really wound up about things that no one would get wound up about. And that was repeating through relationships. It was repeating through personal friendships and things. And I think, ironically, with Reels, a lot of Reels were starting to pop up in my thread about, ADHD and what you may or may not know about it and some of the things that you consider to be symptoms that you didn't know were symptoms. Yeah. I'm like, drawing all the dots together. And so I thought I better go and get this thing checked out. Yeah. And it turns out, I was diagnosed ADHD with so there's a factor number that they give the impacts of the symptoms, which was a 9 out of 12 for me.
Yeah, wow.
Which is pretty intense.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden you turn around and look back at your life and you're
it
like,
makes sense.
Shit.
Yeah, it makes sense,
the amount of things. Because again, I was a musician for 12 years actively, did a degree in music. I reckon I've completed maybe 5 or 6 pieces of music in my life.
Yeah, wow.
But I've got probably 5,000 unfinished pieces of music that sit in the studio still.
Really?
And sometimes I'll go and I'll tinker with one and I won't finish it. And then I'll do it because it's all about until the dopamine wears off, then go to the next thing. Yeah. So that's something that for me in the last 6 months has been about redefining my whole life around knowing where to focus your attention because it's going to get to something and where not to focus it because it's just not going to work.
Yeah.
I mean, dude, I'm renovating. And I've got 4 rooms that are half done. And every time I think, I'll get this done today, and then I look at it and I'm like, I could put that there or that there, but what if I put that there? Yeah. And if I don't do that and I do it that way, and then I'm like, I'm going out.
Yeah.
Because my brain just can't deal with it. So that's been something for me that's been like a whole real new way of living.
Yeah.
But it's bittersweet because you also go, if I'd known about this 30 years ago, maybe it would have been a bit different.
Yeah. But it's just I love this talk because it's just more self-awareness, more awareness around who you are as a person, how you operate. Even to your point before, knowing that I'm happy to be the second in charge. And there's even part of me that thinks like, would I be happy as a second in charge and, you know, and all those other things. But the more awareness that you bring to whether it's, you know, things like ADHD or like I do a lot of, like I actually see a therapist, like a kinesiologist. I'm also working with a breathwork person called cathartic breathwork. And I won't go into it heaps and heaps, but it's effectively breathwork that's intentionally there to bring up stresses in the body and process like unprocessed stuff. And so... yeah, like I think as I've gone through some of those experiences and things like that, it's brought a lot more self-awareness to myself. And even I very much relate to what you're talking about. Even like you talked about, you know, emotions and feeling overwhelmed and all those other things. Like that's one of the things that why I had to leave the corporate world was because especially with the bank that I was with, I couldn't operate in the political system that they had. Like you have to, I don't want to say it's soulless, but I will definitely say that you have to be able to operate in a way that like you almost don't have emotion to the decisions that you're making.
It's a sterile environment.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I wear my heart on my sleeve way too much to not only like I was in a managerial role and I got quick smart out of there because I was all over the places. I was all over the place and realized that. And some of the things that I'm talking about, like the breath work and the therapy and a whole range of other things that I've done has really, really helped me to understand that. And just know things like how to work with what you do. Like, so for example, like I'm down here traveling. So I'm here today, tomorrow. I'm doing a keynote on Sunday morning, and then I head back home. And before I get home, there's a good chance that I'll go and stop at the beach before I even go and see my family. Yep. And it's my way of like almost grounding into my body and everything else. And just little aspects like that just are as a result of more curiosity into who you are as a person, that self-awareness and aspects as well.
100%. Because, and the thing that I empathize with on all that is getting to know myself a bit better, because I would just do things on repeat, you know, like because there's 40, like I'm 43 this year. I turn 44 later this year. And there's so much history and trauma and stuff that you've just not resolved that you go, oh, this is just me. I always used to get the report card in primary school, easily distracted, would do well if he applied himself,
Yeah.
doesn't focus, is the class clown, always seeking attention. I'm like, if you look at the symptoms for ADHD, that's like the top 5.
Yeah.
So why wasn't anything done about it back then?
Yeah.
But now that I'm in that position where I'm getting to know myself a bit better, I think it's about knowing the things that you do that help the symptoms.
Absolutely.
For me, I train Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. If my coach is watching, he's saying I don't train anywhere near enough because I don't recently.
Yeah.
But that's one of those things where if I step away from the regularity of that, I notice my mood start to fall. I ride a motorbike for leisure.
Yeah.
You know, that's one of the, if I don't get out at least once a week, I notice my mood start to fall.
Yeah.
Because you've got to find the things that give you those little sparks of joy.
Yeah.
And you have to also be okay with saying, everyone that wants a piece of me, you can't have me this week. I got to do what works for me.
Absolutely.
And that was always my biggest trip.
I've got a question for you. Where does working on your music fall into that process for you? Do you find it as a joy thing, or is it you have so much worked stuff that you've worked on that it becomes almost like an overwhelm of like, I've got to get to it. What is it for you?
I've got a very weird relationship with music, and it's based on a couple of different things. One is based on the fact that I always expected that I'd be bigger or better than I was.
Yeah.
You know, so there's a bit of not regret, but there's a bit of
untapped talent.
Yeah, I wish that I had gone harder, longer, and achieved more. I wish I knew then what I knew now. Like, it's the difference of when I was coming up in music production or music creation, it was still very gatekeeper. So it was still about, if you didn't have a record deal and you weren't signed to a label, nothing was happening. But I was never prepared to compromise my music creation to get the record deal. Where I sort of tapped out of that, I moved corporate when I was 28, just as I'd finished my degree. And that was when corporate life sort of took over. So as far as making music, so with the renovation, I'm rebuilding a studio, and I'll get back in there and I'll do that sort of stuff. For me, the relationship with music was really about creativity. And fortunately, like, this thing is a bit of that creative aspect for me. But I know that going back into making music is going to be something for me that is a bit of a mental thing to cross, particularly because I'll rebuild the studio, and then I'll just walk in there and stand there and be like, now what? So some of that is about exercising some of these more recent demons and go in there and make music for the sake of making music. Don't go in there and think, I've got to write this song for this label, for this release, for this party. And I think that's really what my life has become about in the past, call it like a year or two, has been reassessing what is it that makes you happy, not what do you think is going to bring happiness.
Yeah.
I think that's the thing for me. Because I'll be happy when.
Yeah.
I'll be happy if this happens. I'll be happy if that happens.
Yeah.
And then they don't happen.
Yeah.
So you got to find other ways.
Absolutely. And what you're talking about is really just a perspective of I'll be happy when, but like at the end of the day, if you sit and look around at, like, even look around now, right? So you've got like a whole bunch of tech set up and you're podcasting, and obviously you're working on your studio and all those other things, but having the perspective of, like, doing pretty good.
Yeah.
And
yeah. And that's one of the things that I am always trying to remind myself that I think we all are. Yeah, you've done okay. Comparison is the thing
the thief of joy.
Definitely. And in today's society, because again, you're on social media. I got this millionaire, I got that millionaire, I got this entrepreneur, like all these. It's like, don't worry about that. No. Just focus on what you're doing. Yeah. Keep a small collective community. Mm-hmm. And spend your time with people that you can impact.
100%.
That's sort of the thing.
100%. Yeah.
What's next for you then? So what's the next steps?
Good question. Like I think so for anyone who listens or watches who follows the NRL, I'm a mad advocate, a mad Penrith Panthers supporter, and the Panthers won the grand final.
Yeah, one of my mates is a mad Broncos fan. He flew up there for that game.
Yeah, and it was obviously one of the greatest games to be there and feel the atmosphere.
Oh, were you there?
Yeah, I was there.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Okay, good.
And it was really interesting. There was actually a guy, there's a Broncos supporter who handed me some napkins. As he sat down, he had a couple of beers under his belt, obviously, and he goes, "That's for later." That's and I laughed, and I was like, "Oh, here we go." And I held on to him because I was like, "I'm going to give these back to him." And then the word, like, he was actually like the funny thing was, like, well, him anyway, the moment that 2 minutes to go, he was already standing up, and then the moment the buzzer went, he was off, but I made sure I made eye contact. I couldn't give him the napkins because I felt like I was going to get bashed if I did.
Yeah.
But I made eye contact, winked at him. But that day, I seen grown men cry and everything. It was I would have been probably in the exact same spot. Where was I going? What's next? So how did I get on this tangent? I'm the same. I just go on these tangents.
Doesn't matter. It's a good tangent.
So what's next?
And by that, I think I mean, like what's happening with the business, but with you.
No, what I was talking about is what I was about to reflect on is Nathan Cleary, right? So Nathan Cleary, the number 7, he's done all these crazy things. There's probably much more that he can do in the Origin arena, but he focused, like, I love reflecting on his journey. It's very similar because he started in the NRL the same time I started in business, and I, as obviously a Penrith supporter and someone who's watched him like really flunk and like, you know, there was a lot of expectation on him to initially start, and he's now winning premierships and all this other stuff. And I like to sort of reflect on, you know, even him, he's been interviewed multiple times and he talks about, I'm only just getting started. Like, I've just got so much more to do. And it's like, mate, like, what else do you have to do? Like, you've won Origins, you've represented your country and won, you know, the World Cup on behalf of Australia. You've won 3 premierships, you've won 2, you know, all these things. But he knows himself that based on his levels, he's got this, like, he's only here and he's still got much more to go. And I know the reason I reflect, and now I come back to this tangent, is for me, this is where it really is just, I feel like I want to enter into the mastery phase. Like I mentioned that I'm removing all these distractions and everything else, and I really want to get into more of like creativity and really drawing out that creativity in the clients that we're working with and those sorts of things where the opportunities are there. So I don't know exactly what that looks like right now, especially for the finishing of this year. It's just getting a whole bunch of stuff done. But there's so much that I've reflected on because I've gone so deep on my personal life. I've learned to also go really deep on my business and the analytics and what's working and what's not, and you know, removing distractions and sticking and focusing on the thing. And so it's a boring answer, but in short, it's basically I want to just get even better. And that's, yeah.
I just want to capitalize on one little thing that you mentioned when you touched on analytics. And it'll take us back to the start of this podcast, you know, watching or producing content in order to get likes and views and those. But analytics is still a very valuable part of this, right? Walk us through the intelligent decisions to make based on analytics and how they should feed future decisions.
Good question. So I think you should sort of have, if you will, seasons, right? So a season or stretch or, you know, whatever you want to call it. This might be a period of time, whether it's 2 to 3 months, where you're giving something a red hot crack. And it might be for the intention of whether it's views, subscribers, or whatever the case is. And so try something, like give yourself a good set of time, and especially when it comes to content, like giving yourself a good couple of months to see the difference between what was it like when I started, what is it like now, are we meeting some of the objectives that we want to, are there any other things that are happening? Because what I typically find, especially with, you know, a lot of the clients that we work with, it really is a good 6 to 9 months before they really start to see the results of their social presence. Because when the first video you ever publish, it was all your friends and family like, oh yeah, go, like, you know, and have all your friends and family like it and share it, until you share the second video, like, yay. And then it wears down. So the novelty of doing something new wears off, and then you're beginning to get into the grind.
Yeah.
Yep.
I think the last podcast that we posted, it got like 3 likes or something.
Yeah.
So we're right in that spot now.
And so you just continue to work, you continue to go. And look, it's really just, even for your podcast, right? So looking at it after the first 10 and going, what are some of the things that we noticed? Even reflections on your time, like, you know, the time that you have to spend fixing up the audio before you send it on, all these other aspects, and looking at it and going, okay, why did we start it in the first place? Am I still enjoying it? Is it meeting the objectives and things like that? And they're really good questions to, you know, really be asking when it comes to, you know, what do you do next? Where does it go? All those other things as well. Because at the end of the day, if the objective was, and coming back, like if the objective was just about views and all these other things, it's just going to be, it's never ending, right? You can start to work on getting better views and better likes and all these other things. But for me, I think where I think the real, especially as someone who's not necessarily creating it yourself, like what I mean by that is, you'll see creators, like we talked about Mr. Beast, and we all know like influencers and different people in different things who create their own content, and they do so that like it's almost like a full-time job where they get to like review and take on feedback and act on those things very, very like quickly, and they're making changes and updates and things like that. And so when you're doing it more so through you know, those filters and everything else, the feedback takes a little bit longer because you're still running a business, you're still keeping, you know, face, and it's understanding this is where we are, this is what we want to continue to do. We obviously want to continue to run our business, not become influencers. However, how is this reflecting on some of the goals and outcomes that we want to achieve? Is it getting close? Is it not? And it's just, it's obviously just asking some of those important questions. And then, so a good example might be, all right, it takes you a week to do your audio, whatever the case is. Is that something that I really need to do? Is it something that I'm still happy to do? That may be a yes, it may be a no.
Yep.
There may be other alternatives, and it's just looking at going, okay, is this something that I want to continue? Like, do I enjoy it enough to keep grinding? Do I just set in a date every whatever, and just be very, very diligent, you know, lots of questions and lots of, just, I guess, reflecting on the important aspects of what the intentions were and where you're at with that.
Yeah. For people that are doing content and they're active in that space now, when it comes to platforms, are you seeing from a professional standpoint any platforms that are doing better or worse than others? Are there certain things that you have to be involved in? Is your approach be everywhere? Like so
I look, my approach isn't, because of the businesses that we work with, the most important factor that we get hired for is the time that we save someone. So like, which is a natural thing once you're like obviously editing and doing all the different aspects and publishing, all those other things. And so when it comes to, you know, platforms and all these other things, I like to focus more on the business outcomes, because they're definitely like, you know, for example, TikTok has had enormous growth and it's one of the best places to still go viral on different particular videos. LinkedIn is a great place for business connections. Facebook has lots of Facebook groups, communities, things like that. Instagram is sort of like, it's still a very, very visual place. YouTube is very keyword centric, very, you know, entertainment focused, obviously with YouTube Shorts and all those other things, right? So each platform has almost its own dress code per se, you know, and you can look at one, you know, that's potentially better than the other and all those other things. But I like to really focus on the business metrics and the business goals and where those business goals are and what are some of the best platforms to be utilizing on those things. So I know I haven't necessarily answered your question.
No, but it paints that picture because I'm confused about the whole thing. And again, it's like I try and watch and see what's going on out there. And there's people that they might have 100,000 followers on Facebook, and you post the video on Facebook, it gets 20 likes, but you post the same thing on Instagram and all of a sudden it's got 10 million likes. It's just, is a bit of it that's sort of almost unpredictable, right?
It is. And each platform has its I just mentioned each platform has its own dress code, its own, unofficial rules and guides and things like that. Some of the platforms actually tell you what their recommendations are, some of them don't. And, there's people who are more popular on more platforms than others and things like that. And so especially for the businesses that we work with where they're not in the space of wanting to become a creator, not wanting to become an influencer and attract brand deals, but more so, monetize their message by just sharing educational content and valuable content and valuable pieces, I'd be looking and understanding what's the purpose of us doing this in the first place, coming back to that question, and then reiterating, okay, is there ways that we can grow this through our socials and through these different aspects and just it's just continuous improvement really is the end question, is the end piece that I'd suggest there.
Yeah. What about for a business owner that is, and we'll use the example of a business that's sort of like ours, right? So it could be a small to medium enterprise business, 100 employees. They do about, $15, $20 million a year. And they want to get into social media, but there's a fear. And the fear is the people. We want to try and get our people to be representative of our business. There's always some favor in your people speaking the message, but then we're worried about they're going to say the wrong thing. They're going to come across what's the balance between letting people be themselves and reflect your brand versus curating it and keeping everyone on task?
Yeah. It's a big question, isn't it?
Because it goes back to your earlier point where you're saying working in corporate. When you work in corporate, there's a certain amount of your personality that has to become the business. You can't be all you.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So is there a way that we can empower our staff to echo that message without there being too much risk?
I think so. I think and I think it's first of all having a conversation about one, what are our objectives? And then two, looking at does anyone want to buy into these objectives? And you may not necessarily have the response that you want. However, if it's important, then it's just continuing to open up that conversation and lead by, for me as a business owner, I'd be wanting to lead by example and things like that. And so I think there's obviously a number of different factors, but I think there's a really big opportunity. And as long as it feels authentic, and what I mean by authentic is it's not just one person leading the charge and saying everyone needs to now follow my dictatorship and do this and this. Whereas you just want, in the simplest way I can probably explain it, you just want your socials to be an extension of you, and it needs and where you can find those opportunities, whether it's capturing even some behind the scenes stories or whatever the case is for Instagram, whether it's interviewing some of your team members and having an open conversation, whether it's there's even just rewarding people and just mentioning loyalty and think if you've got team members who have been on for 5 years or 10 years or whatever the case is, just recognizing them and publicly sharing it and bringing it's things that are already happening, but finding a way to share it and extend it to your digital platforms is probably the simplest way I can put it.
As we come to the end, I want to close with a question that would probably be simple to ask, a bit harder to answer.
Yeah.
For the business owner that has never done social media and they want to do something,
Yep.
what is the easiest thing for them to do starting now?
Pick up their phone and hit record.
Yep.
And it can literally be anything. Like not everyone is comfortable in front of a camera. It may be, it can even be writing, writing something that you're passionate about, or talking on a podcast and not turning the video on and things like that. I think it's just trying and executing, I know for me, when I first started, like one of the reasons why I got so into video was because it's really funny. I had a huge fear of being on camera. And it's one of the reasons why I was so passionate about helping other people is because I'd gone through that experience myself. And I just I was so liberated, if you will, about this opportunity. And I was so fascinated by people who just have this natural camera presence and all these other stuff. And so for me, it was like this learning process of just wanting to get out and try things and whatnot. So I think, one, there needs to be that curiosity, and two, that curiosity will take you to places, whether it is, trying to share something online or starting a Facebook Live and just talking about something. I think there sort of you need to have a drive, or you need to have a reason why you're doing it. But it's so simple. Like every single one of us has the ability to be able to do our own content and creativity and all those other things. Like as fancy as all this equipment is, to get started, it's very, very simple. Like we've got, you can record your voice, you can interview people. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's really just about doing it, right?
Correct.
Just do it.
Yeah.
Alan, thanks so much for coming out today, man. This has
Thanks for
been
having
a
me.
ball. I reckon we've got to do this again. We're going to have all your details in the comment section. But quickly, if people want to get in touch, where do they go?
Yep. So our company is called Triple Effect. So it's tripleeffect.com.au. My name's Alan Howle. I can't even say my own name. Alan, AlanHowle. So find me on Insta is probably the best place.
Yep.
But thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it.
Thanks for producing the show, buddy.
Boom.
we wouldn't have a show if it wasn't for you guys. It's been cool, and we'll do it again.
Boom. Thank you.
Thanks, buddy.